welcome to You're Doing It All Wrong. My name is Shana Orczyk Sissel, and I am the founder and CEO at Banríon Capital Management. Our show is set to take on myths and misconceptions as it relates to alternative products of all sorts. And given the current market conditions, I thought it makes sense to do an episode today taking on a specific type of alternative and discussing some of the limitations and benefits that they may have. As you know, that's the purpose of this. And I know it's been a little bit of time since I put out a new episode, and I apologize for that. It has been crazy busy here at Banríon. We're really excited about some of the great opportunities and partnerships we're working on. And I also happened to have hurt my back a couple weeks ago, about a month ago. And so I've been a little limited, but getting better, and thought now would be a great time to put out an episode since alternatives seem to be the topic du jour everywhere I look these days. So what's our topic today? I am going to take on buffer ETFs. Buffer ETFs have grown in popularity in the last few years as they become more and more available for clients who are, a little bit uneasy with the market. And I think today that is even more relevant as we have the continued debate: recession, no recession, soft landing, inflation, Fed rates. Market has been difficult to say the least lately. And, there's a lot of discussion about, potential downside and recession in the overall economy. So buffer ETFs have grown in popularity as people want to have that opportunity to participate in the stock market, but they are very concerned about the potential for downside and would like to limit that exposure. Now, to give you a little history lesson, buffer ETFs come from a history and kind of the natural evolution of what were called structured notes. 15 years ago, you could go to JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, any of the larger investment banks, and you could get structured notes. They still exist today. Typically what these are the same thing: asymmetrical return with some downside protection, upside participation. They were made up traditionally, and I'm making this a little simplified, but of an option contract to provide participation into a specific underlying exposure. Sometimes that was single stock, sometimes that was factor, sometimes that was index. And then there would be a treasury with a yield component that would provide some downside protection. I always found these products difficult, very illiquid, hard to sell if a client wanted to get out, and quite frankly, almost always created with the house in mind. And when I say house, I mean like the casino. The banks would structure these so that more times than not, the probability would be that they would win, meaning that they would cap the upside of, say, the S&P 500, knowing that the probability was that the S&P would outperform whatever the cap was, and they would make all the money on the upside. And so I was never a fan of structured notes. I was very outspoken about that back in the day. But buffer ETFs provide a couple of solutions to the things I disliked about structured products, which is that they are more liquid and a little bit easier to understand. So in this case, the number one thing I think is really important to note with these buffer ETFs is, yes, they provide upside participation with a cap. Usually, you get 15% of the S&P 500 return, and then anything over that you would not receive. But in the case of potentially having downside, you might only have to participate in 10% of the downside of the S&P 500. And if you think the S&P is going down 20%, that could be attractive, especially for clients who are a little uneasy in the current market environment. Now, that said, it's super important to note that you only get the full benefit of the protection in buffer ETFs if you purchase the ETF on the day it is issued and you hold that ETF until the day it expires. Buffer ETFs are not evergreen. They're issued on a certain date and they expire on a certain date. That's a reflection of the underlying option contracts that they're made up of. And so that is just worth noting. If you purchase it at any time other than the day it is issued, you are not guaranteed the same protections. Also, the downside protection is only on the first 10%. So let's say the market goes down 20, rebounds, and then goes down another 20. You only got that first 10% down. You're still participating in the next 20% that it goes down. So worth noting. However, they can be quite attractive. They're easy to explain to clients. But you will need to constantly be reassuring your client that the protections that they state are going to be received once they expire, because they do trade like normal ETFs. They have bid-ask spreads. There's a supply, demand, and creation redemption aspect to them. So on a daily basis, the price may not actually reflect the protection that they are promised. Again, conversation you need to have with your client, something you need to be aware of, because it will come up in conversation with your client when they are trying to figure out why they're not getting that downside protection that they thought they had. Again, must purchase on the day it's issued and hold till the day it expires to get the full benefit of the protections. Now, for some clients, that could make sense. And I'm not a big hater of buffer ETFs entirely. I think for some clients, because they're very clear on what your protection is and your upside is, they have a beginning and end date, clients can be comfortable with that. They have a lot of liquidity. So if your client suddenly decides that they don't want to keep the product, you can sell it pretty easily. However, they're not my favorite products if my goal is to provide my client upside participation to a point with downside protection. What I prefer is something like our client, our platform partner, Taze Asset Management's Mrsk product provides. Mrsk is a options writing income strategy. So what Mrsk does is provide exposure to the S&P 500 through the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, and then it writes call options on the S&P 500 and purchases on a active and tactical basis put options on the S&P 500. What this allows it to do is provide strong upside participation in the S&P 500. Usually on average, it's somewhere between 70 and 80% of the upside, while providing somewhere between 40 and 50% of the downside by being active and tactical in buying puts. The income provided by the call writing allows for the purchase of the put options, and these are leap options, so long dated. For that reason, I find this product to be a better fit to provide upside participation with limiting of downside to a specific index. I like using it in our alts model, the Banríon alternative model, because, for example, right now I'm a little, I'm not quite sure where I think this market is going. I am concerned that there's more downside, but I have seen over the last 6 to 12 months that the market is more resilient, especially those technology companies. So if I'm wrong, I want to be able to participate. Mrsk allows us to do that. And being an evergreen product, I don't have to worry about when I buy it in order to understand what kind of protections I'm going to get. So with that said, my little take on buffer ETFs, important things to note: must purchase on the day issued and hold till the day they expire to get the full benefit of the protections. But they do have very clear and explicit participations that you can easily explain to your clients. They are much more liquid than their, predecessors of structured notes. And for some clients, they can make perfect sense as long as they are comfortable knowing that in between, they may not necessarily see the protections that they think they have just due to normal market conditions. But personally, I prefer a product like Mrsk because of the evergreen nature, and I can still get that upside participation with downside protection, and I don't have to worry about when I purchase the product. The difference, of course, is unlike the buffered products, I don't know if I'm going to get 70% or 80% participation upside. It could be 60, it could be a number of different things. I know for sure I'm going to get upside participation, and same thing on the downside. I'm not guaranteed against a certain loss, which is what the buffer products can provide. So pick your poison. I hope this helps you better explain these products and talk to your clients about these products in the future, especially now where I know they're coming up more and more often. As always, feel free to leave a comment below. If you would like us to take on a myth, misconception, or bring together some sort of educational framework about something you have questions about, similar to this buffer ETF topic, so leave a comment below. Please subscribe if you like this video. And of course, that helps us get out there. More people see us. So like I said, if you have questions, concerns, or you have a topic you would like us to take on, please let us know. We're always here for you. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.